So our topic today, fostering a sense of belonging for students with disabilities. I get to share with you my past research that I've been working on the last couple of years. They say the dissertation process and your defense is probably one of the most stressful things that you can experience, but I would say presenting in front of my colleagues and my supervisor might be a little bit worse, so we'll see. Take it easy on me. You're also probably wondering why I have this creepy eye on as kind of like the visual for this training. You have to stay to find out. Okay. So a quick background on myself. These are my kiddos, Snow White and Michelangelo. Molly's 4 and Frankie's 6. I got into education as an autistic support teacher. I taught at Devereaux Cares, a school for children with autism, and at Lionville Middle School I did autistic support for many years. Prior to, this is often what I look like for the last 10 years. I've been a TAC at DCIU 25, doing a lot of behavior consultation, PBIS coaching, a lot of autism supports. And how I manage all that in my sanity is this. I am an avid runner. I run every single day. It's my sanity. So here we have to have some expectations. So we're going to follow the PEP expectations for today. And we have a little motivation to keep you here and keep you engaged. I'm asking you to be present, engaged, and participate. And as we go through the presentation, I have my handy Vanna there. Emily's going to be handing out as you participate, and you can get a PEP ticket. And with our PEP tickets, at the end, we'll put them in and draw for this lovely Hershey surprise bag. Okay, so here's our warm-up. In honor of Snow White, my daughter's Halloween costume, we're going to do a quick check-in to see how everyone's feeling or where you are. If you are feeling, it's a little light there. So if you're feeling grumpy, you would be a number 1. At this point of the day, maybe we do have a couple of number 1s. If you're feeling a little sneezy or not feeling your best as far as feeling sick, you would hold up a number 2. If you're feeling a little dopey, maybe at this point of the day you're feeling a little dopey, that would be a 3. Sleepy would be a number 4. Doc, maybe you know this topic really well. Maybe you've been working with kids with disabilities for a really long time. You're a pro at making them feel like they fit in and that they feel a sense of belonging. Then you would be Doc. You would be a number 5. Bashful is going to be 6, and number 7 is going to be happy. So I'm just going to have you all hold up your hands. Tell me how you're feeling. I got a 3, 4, couple 7s. All right, a little sleepy. Mostly sleepies on the first day. Okay, that's not... So I'll try to keep you awake here. Here's really our outline. We're going to cover belonging in general, and then we're going to specifically talk about it for students with neurodiverse backgrounds, right? So my study really focused on students on the autism spectrum, high-functioning middle school students. One of the criteria for the study was that they had to be verbal. So I always like to be upfront with that because my study actually, I sat and interviewed students on the spectrum to understand their experiences with belonging at middle school. Okay, and then the big thing is what can we do to create this place of belonging? Okay, so when we look at these 3 components, I wanted to try to figure out how do I link these. These were the 3 things that I was most interested in. And our students with disabilities have been included in the regular education setting for 40, 50 years. The law says they have access to general education environment, general education peers, general ed curriculum. But I wanted to know, is that enough for them to feel a sense of belonging? I wanted to know from their experiences, what things promote that sense of belonging for them in school? What do teachers do? What do other kids do? Or what do they do that inhibit that sense of belonging, right? And ultimately, is it true inclusion? Is the inclusion model really creating that place of belonging for our students? So instead of me going through all the characteristics of autism and giving you a study 101 on autism, I'm going to have you raise your hand and tell me, what do we know? What are some characteristics of autism? I'm going to repeat what you guys say just so we can capture it. Okay? Go ahead.
Social skills deficits.
Good, social skill deficits. And Emily's going to use her behavior-specific praise and and give a ticket. Thanks, exam. Go ahead.
Emotional dysregulation.
Good. Emotional dysregulation. Excellent. In the back.
Sensory issues.
Good. Sensory dysregulation. Being able to navigate their bodies in different environments. Good.
Communication difficulties.
Good. Communication difficulties. What else?
Motor planning issues.
Good. Motor planning issues. Yes. It doesn't have to be something challenging. Absolutely. Yeah. Sometimes our kids are extremely gifted, right?
I was just going to say, like, diverse learning abilities, right?
Good. Diverse learning abilities. Excellent. Focus issues. Good. Being able to stay on task. Some behavior challenges sometimes that we see. Sure. Right? So when we think about all these things that we know about kids with autism. See ya. When we think about all these characteristics of autism, does anyone think that these kiddos might be kids that struggle with belonging in an inclusive middle school setting? Yeah, right? So that's why this was really the area that I wanted to focus on. So these are just some common words that are associated when we think about belonging, okay? I want you to take a look at that list, and I want you to pick two. You can write them down, you can jot them in your brain if you want, but I want you to pick two that resonate most with you and how you experience belonging. Okay, so our options are included, accepted, fitting in, understood, comfortable, authentic, loved, connected, and vulnerable. Now, you don't have to share it with anyone. Why don't you go ahead and write them down? Because when I get to the point where I tell you what the kids said, I want to see if yours compare to those. Okay? When I decided to study belonging, a lot of people ask me, well, who cares? Right? Who cares? The law says these kids just need access to that environment. They need access to the material. They need access to their peers. Does it really matter if they feel like they fit in? And the research says yes, it does matter, right? So let's take a look real quick at some of the benefits of belonging to kind of create that environment for them. We know there's higher academic achievement, a greater social acceptance. We have greater motivation in school and less attendance and behavior issues for students that feel like they belong in the environment. On the flip side, we have risk, right? The risk of deprivation and all of those things that you guys just shared about characteristics put our kids at greater risk for that deprivation, right? So some of those things, a higher level of stress or loneliness, anxiety, depression, isolation, social rejection, even increased substance abuse, and negative attitude towards school. So yes, it matters, right? And that's why this work is really important and that we understand from the student perspective what we can do to make it a better environment for them. Okay, so here's going to be our first activity. Get excited. 3:30, let's do this. Any yellow slide, it's going to be something that you're doing with someone else. So it's electric, you're going to connect, okay? I want you to think of when and with whom you experience a sense of belonging the most. So think about it for a second. And specifically, I want you to answer these two questions. Is it with one person or small group, or do you experience a sense of belonging in a larger environment? Okay, and then the other piece is, what about that person or those groups make you feel like you belong? So go ahead and think about that for a second, and you're gonna just turn to the person around you or next to you and just do a quick share. So everyone gets a ticket. Everyone participated. Good luck, Anne. No, I really appreciate everyone staying engaged here. This is really important. You have to reflect on how you experience belonging first before we can truly understand it for our kids. Is anyone willing to share without saying specifically? You don't have to name the specific person, or I'm just going to repeat back what you said.
I'm usually it's one person or small group, somebody that, just makes me feel like myself, somebody I can just be comfortable with. I can be who I truly am, and I can trust that, just me. I don't have to be somebody I'm not.
Awesome. So I heard small group, right? And I heard someone that you can be yourself, you can be comfortable with. You know, you don't have to pretend that you're not someone that, you know, you're not. Good. Anyone else? Yes.
Small group, so I'll share. I have two sisters. I was gonna say, a small group, I have two sisters, so we are very close in age, and we just feel very comfortable with each other, and judgment-free for the most part, right? Open to share things, our experiences, and provide each other, like, feedback, without feeling, like, critical of each other.
Okay. One more. Go ahead.
We also talked about small group or with one person and just said that it's easier to share, it's easier to be like heard and validated.
Good. Okay, small group. It's easier to share. It's easier to be heard and validated. Great.
Having time and like things in common.
Good. Having
Even
things
when
in
you go to a
common.
large group, when you have something in common.
Good. So small group within the large group. Love to hear that. Okay. A lot of common themes, right? So small group is something, feeling to be able to feel yourself or vulnerable. That's another really common thing that we see. I want you to reflect on that as I start to go through what the kids were sharing and how they experience it, okay? So my study was really based on this framework of Baumeister and Leary's need to belong theory. And Baumeister and Leary did lots and lots of research and did a huge summary on belonging. And what they said was belonging is innate. We are all born with this extreme motivation to belong, okay? And so I questioned, is that the same for kids on the spectrum? We have a social motivation deficit for our kids on the spectrum, right? So they may not be as motivated to make those relationships. They don't have that social reward and experience that reward that we do from interacting with others in the same way, right? And so Baumeister and Leary said 2 things have to happen in order for someone to experience a sense of belonging. The first one is that frequent positive interactions with a small group, one person or a small group. So just as you guys were experiencing it same way, they really stress that the quality of relationships was way more important than the quantity. So it's not that I'm the kid in the cafeteria that has all of these friends and I know everyone. It's that I might have one best friend, and that is better, higher chance of that student experiencing extreme belonging. The second component is the part that we're interested in for kids on the spectrum, the perception, okay? There has to be a perception, an understanding in their experience, in their minds, that they have a reciprocal relationship with another person. So those 2 things have to be there, the frequent positive interactions and the perception that there's an interpersonal bond, okay? So that's gonna come back into play as I explain how students experienced it. So, and also I considered the inclusion matrix from Crown Up on Cobb. Is everyone familiar with this model, right? I love that they look at access and they're also looking at unconditional belonging, right? And so our goal for our kids is to be in that inclusion box. High level of access, high level of unconditional belonging. But is that what it looks like for our kids in general ed? A lot of times I'm still seeing it look like this. Kids off to the side of the room with a paraprofessional supporting them one-on-one. Are they in the physical classroom? Yes. But are they fully included? Do they have that access? No. So I really looked hard at this too when considering some of the questions that went into the interview protocol for the study, okay? So I just want to do a quick reflect. You're not going to share. You're just going to take, some time to think through this before then I share out what the kids said, the good stuff, right? What do you think? Do you think students on the spectrum experience belonging the same way we do? What do you think makes them feel like they belong? What do you think some of the things they're going to say? What makes them feel excluded? And then what factors might impact that sense of belonging? Are you ready? This is the fun part. Okay, there's that creepy eye, right? So the eye is going to represent that word perception. And as I was analyzing and going through all of the data, that word kept coming up to me. Because how kids were sharing with me that they experience belonging, I was like, that's not belonging. That doesn't make sense, right? For me. But in their perception and their view, it absolutely did. So it really came down to that old saying that we're all really familiar with, beauty lies in the eye of the beholder, right? What you think is beautiful and what you think is beautiful and what I think is beautiful, very different, right? Not wrong, but we all think something that's beautiful is very different, right? This is how kids experience belonging. Different than us, not wrong, but different, okay? And so belonging lies in the perception of the beholder. And so when I share some of the experiences that kids said, examples of when they felt like they belonged at middle school, everyone might say, I wouldn't agree with that. Remember, this is from their perspective and their perception, okay? So John says, and so I even had this friend like named Molly and stuff. Like we usually just have class together and stuff. And once she did say hello to me in gym class. Let me tell you about John. He said Molly was his best friend. Once she said hello to me in gym class, right? But in his mind, after I explained belonging and we talked about it and I gave lots of examples, that's who he connected with, and that was his experience, right? Not wrong, but his perception was Molly in gym class said hi to me, and that's where I felt a sense of belonging, okay? Luke, my favorite part about school would probably be my friends and like just hang out with them, right? Luke talked on and on about his friends. So I asked a follow-up question. Would they agree that they're friends with you? And he replied, no, not at all. But I think I'll ask them, right? Everyone can probably hear like a kiddo saying that, right? He felt belonging through these friends. He kept talking about this group of friends, and here, he wasn't even sure in their mind if they thought they were friends with him. But that's how he experienced belonging. So again, would we associate the same experiences when we were to describe our own belonging experiences? Probably not. Right? And that's where the perception piece really comes into play. So go back to those 2 words that you wrote down or you thought about. This was the overarching themes that kids shared, how they experienced belonging. These were the top 2. Okay? After summarizing all the data, it came down to connections and authenticity. Okay? Did anyone have those 2? Yes! Yes, amazing. Okay. Let me talk you through some of them and some examples that they said. Connections. All of them shared they felt they belonged most with one specific person or a small group environment, right? That was pretty predictable. That is aligned with Baumeister and Leary's model, right? That quality relationship versus quantity relationship. Positive peer and adult interactions. And so when I think of that, I think of something probably like over the top, someone really going out of their way. No. Commenting on their sneakers. Commenting on new sneakers was something that they expressed, a teacher made them feel that they belonged in their classroom. A new haircut. So it was really small, little interactions that the students reported made them feel like they belonged in those regular classrooms. Same with students. When they said what other neurotypical peers would do to create a sense of belonging for them, it was very small little things. Sharing a pencil. Again, perception. For them, that means a lot, right? That's how they reported. And then the perception that there was the friendship. So it's not, whether the friendships were not vetted. I didn't go hunt those kids down and say, hey, are you really close with this kid? No, right? It was just the perception that there's this friendship, right? And when we think about authenticity, there's nothing better than kids being able to feel like themselves, right? And they all expressed this. They said, some of the kids said with the challenges that they have, they always feel like they have to act like they are someone that they're not. And so they said when they are in a class where they can be themselves, or they're with kids that they can be themselves, they feel the greatest sense of belonging. Okay. And they also connected when they found they had similar interests to teachers or peers, that also created a higher sense of authenticity for them. They could be themselves. The one student shared on and on about how everything he liked wasn't, quote, age appropriate. We've heard that, right? Middle school, high school teachers. We try to get our kids to be more age appropriate with what we're having them be interested in and access, and the kids just said, when I can just like what I like, and the teacher has a conversation with me about Pokemon, right? So it's little things that we don't think create that sense of belonging. So here are a couple examples. Matt says, I'm happy with the number of friends I have, and he talked over and over just about one. Just Johnny, over and over. So it's just that one kiddo that makes a difference, right? When we think about authenticity, Alan, he was a character, and he said, I'm able to have like a personality that I actually like inside the group. So he was specifically talking here about his support class, right? And he says, inside the group, I was kind of like feeling crazy personality, and outside the group, it's like just like a different personality, but still a nice one, right? So he really was able to identify, this is when I feel like myself the most. Take a look. I had the kids rate from a 1 to 5 about their environment. Where do they feel the highest sense of belonging within their school? Okay, 1 female, 4 males, and take a look. What do we notice? Someone raise your hand so then I can repeat back what you're saying. Yes? Lunchroom and support class, yeah. So I kind of averaged them out to get a better idea across the board. What are we looking at? The highest place that kids felt that they belonged was their support class, right? Makes sense to us, right? But then when I asked them about it, they're like, oh, but I don't need that class. I don't, you can take me out of that class. I don't need specifically social skills or a curriculum support class. Middle school kids, right? I don't need that class. But yet that was where they felt they belonged the most. Small environment, kids that they had been with multiple years, right? So that reciprocal piece was there. It's really sad to me that the lowest rated place was a regular ed classroom. Where do our itinerant supplemental kids spend most of their time? Regular ed classroom. 4 of these kids were itinerant level of support. So they're pretty much out in regular ed almost all day, besides that support class. 2.4, that was our lowest rated one. That's a problem, right? That's a problem for us, right? Especially when they don't think they need the support class, right? Take that one out. Then lunch and hallways are kind of about where I thought they'd be rated because of the unstructured setting, large environment. We know that now these kids experience belonging in that small environment. But I thought this was important just to share. This is how they rate it. Okay, so when we look at factors that promote belonging, this is what the kids said. I categorized them into 2 areas. External things that promote belonging, and then some internal things that promote belonging. When we look at external things, all of the kids shared they're tired of people making decisions for them. And they said, even in class, I think my teacher thinks she's helping me by choosing my group, but I want to choose my group. Like, that's a strategy that we use for kids on the spectrum so they don't have to navigate the social piece, is to pair them with someone ahead of time or pair them with a group. These kids are saying they want choice and voice in order to feel a sense of belonging, okay? Positive teacher connections, kind of going back to the connection piece of how they experience belonging, but small little things that teachers are doing, going out of their way to make a connection with them. And then peer support. Almost all 5 students were able to identify a time when a general ed peer had supported them in some way and how that made them feel that they were part of the community or felt like they belonged. Internally, some of the things that came out as strengths or things that promote were the perception, right? Not necessarily that they had all these friends, but they had a perception that they had one really strong friend or a really good relationship with Johnny, right? It was that perception piece. They thought it. And then the use of social skills. A lot of the kids said, I know what I'm supposed to do. I don't do it. Sound familiar? Right? So they said when they used the skills that they had, that promoted a sense of belonging. And that's internal, right? So when we looked at inhibiting factors, this was the really hard part for me, because this is where I know that they are experiencing these challenges, but we have to identify what are the things that are getting in the way so that we can figure it out and do better, right? Lack of social connection. The students really shared a lot about not feeling connected 6th grade year. I only interviewed 7th and 8th graders. I wanted them to have experienced a middle school for a full year. And a lot of them expressed that middle school was their loneliest year, and the sense of belonging was really low because it lacked the social connection with peers. And by 7th grade, they felt that they had at least made one perceived friendship, okay? Negative teacher approach was consistent across all the kids. So what do I mean by that? Especially if you're a teacher in the room, get ready. They don't want to be treated differently. Not all the students in the study knew they had autism, but all the students in the study knew that they needed additional support compared to a gen ed peer. And they said, my teacher treats me different because I have social skills class. This is their perception. My teacher babies me. Or my teacher doesn't understand how I learn. And they felt that that was an inhibiting factor of them feeling a sense of belonging in those classrooms. Okay. And then challenging peer behaviors. This is one that we're probably all predicting was going to be there, right? Bullying. And the perception of bullying. What does bullying look like? Things that they explained, things that they described. Kids throwing carrots at them in the cafeteria. A lot of them use the same language of crazy behavior when kids display crazy behavior. And I asked them to expand a little bit on that. And they said crazy behavior is when kids are screaming or they're pushing each other. It's unstructured, it's crazy. I can't stand that, right? They aren't able to manage their own emotions in those settings. And that's something that they picked up on that peers are doing that inhibit them from feeling a sense of belonging. And then internally, again, those challenges with social competence. So difference between social skills, social competence, using the skills, right? They all expressed, I know the skills, I just don't use them, right? That was across the board. Social motivation. If kids aren't experiencing the social reward of relationships, there's no motivation to try, right? And a couple of the kids expressed, it's not worth it, right? They said, it's not worth it for me to try my best to use all the skills I have just so, a kid will talk to me. It wasn't worth it. The benefit wasn't there. So we have to really start to look as an educational team to look and see what can we be doing to increase that social motivation. How can we start to get them to experience that social reward so they're more motivated to put the effort forward. And the last piece that they identified was self-perception and a negative self-perception. A lot of the students expressed they don't feel the confidence in those situations to use their skills, right? So they know what they're supposed to use, but they have a negative self-perception of themselves. My one 8th grade boy, Alan, he said, if you interviewed me in 6th grade, I would be a totally different student than now that you're interviewing me in 8th grade. He said in 6th grade, I had no confidence. I didn't like myself. I didn't talk to anyone. And he said, in the summer of 8th grade, my parents sat me down and told me I had autism. And he said, in 20 minutes, my world made sense. And he said it changed my self-perception. And he said the way I looked at other kids at school and the way I looked at myself, and changed my self-perception to be positive. And that now I feel a sense of belonging because I understand myself and I understand how other people are not like me and why. Right? So that's pretty strong, right? So just some quick implications, and we're just going to talk about what we can do. And then you guys are off to happy hour. Right? So things that stand out here. That role of perception. It's huge. Right? The role of students understanding from their perception. It's however they experience it. We all experience belonging very differently. Right? And the factors that promote it for us are different. Same for students. The power of one. It just takes one teacher to go out of their way to comment on shoes, to comment on their hair. That makes the difference. One friend, remember Johnny in the cafeteria, Molly in the gym class saying hi. That one kid makes the difference. Social motivations impact on the use of skills, figuring out how do we get them to be motivated. Self-perception's role, explaining them, getting them to learn more about themselves, increasing that positive self-perception and increasing their confidence then impacts their ability to belong in situations within the building. And that environment. Looking at the environment and really saying, what can we be doing differently in that classroom setting to get that number from 2.4 up to closer to 5. So here's your last yellow. I want you just to do a quick turn and talk. What needs to change? What are some things we can start to incorporate into our school environments? What are some takeaways that we can do to help, now that you know from their perspective, to help create a sense of belonging? And then I'll share some tips, okay? Just a couple minutes. Thank you all. I can't tell you how happy it makes me to see people talking about this. Is that so silly? This topic is just so important to me, so I love that everyone's engaging and having really good conversations. I am going to sprint around if anyone wants to share some things that you talked about. What needs to change? What are some things that we can do?
I was just saying, we're from Easter Seals, and we do preschool special education, and we are lucky enough to have an inclusive preschool classroom that both of my kids have attended. And it is just, it changed, I think, my kids' just perspective on how to include other kids. They don't even know that they're doing it, right? Like, I was just sharing with my colleague here that, like, you know, we were at a pool this summer, and there was a teenager with autism at the pool, and he was with his dad, and they were playing, and my son goes, I think he has autism. I'm like, yeah, but I bet you he does. That's why his dad's playing with him, you know? And we talked about it, right? My son's 9. So being able for families to have those conversations, to not make it something that's like odd, right? Or something that's not talked about, or to say like, oh, don't go near them, you know what I mean? Like, I think a lot of this starts when kids are young, and it starts with families being more educated on disability awareness and how to have those like inclusive conversations with young kids.
Yeah. Can we give her thanks?
I was fortunate to teach students with autism and life skills from a 4th grade, and I actually traveled with them all the way until they were seniors. And as you talked about, the middle school was very interesting, because I will say that was the most difficult time for my students, because I also think the group of teachers, and I'm a teacher, so I'm not like bashing anybody, but I think there was a sense of, in elementary, they allowed them to be free, speak freely. If they asked questions, they included them in answering questions. Middle school, it was very like test driven, like we have to follow this, I can't interrupt my class. And they weren't as free to allow them to answer. And I could see where that's where maybe they didn't go, because then you're starting to get into your more difficult math and your more science. So they didn't feel as included. So I would have conversations with my teachers, allow them to answer questions. It may not be right. It's okay, because the kid next to them may not be right. But allowing them to express what they think something might be. And then when we got to high school, Again, high school teachers are a little bit different. They're a little bit more free, a little bit more creative. The students succeeded because they were able to find their little niche, and maybe in the history class, that's where they got excited. And I had a couple teachers that loved it, and they would call on those kids because that's, you talked about, like they were huge in that area and they could answer. Well, they let them kind of do more in the classroom. So we have to get teachers, all of us, to understand, like, we have to give them the opportunity to open up and to actually talk. Don't be afraid to call on them. You know, allow them that opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, 2 more.
I'll be super quick. I think the biggest thing is, instead of as a teacher trying to change students' perceptions, is to understand their perceptions and be able to help talk them through their thinking and what they're feeling.
Thank you. And there's one more over here. Someone raised.
I was just sharing that a person in my classroom, I have a student with autism in a 5th grade general education classroom, and recently we've been trying all school year about like facilitating friendships and things like that, and he came up to me the other day and he told me that so-and-so asked to be his friend, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome, great. And he was like, I told them no because I don't need any more friends. So I was like, what? But he expressed to me that he has too many people that care about him and he couldn't handle one more relationship. And my perception, I was a little stunned, but it's just important, and it's important for me to like understand that what matters is his perception and not necessarily mine, and that I need to let that go. If he feels good about his relationships, then that's good, and I need to hang it up.
Thank you. And if you walk away with anything from this presentation, that role of perception and understanding, it's their experience, and that's okay, even if we don't agree. Like, we're working so hard to something, and they don't want it. That's okay. Thank you for sharing, everyone. So here are some of the things, recommendations for practice, and really it comes down to professional development, working with teachers, creating that environment to support and foster connections and authenticity. What that looks like in our classrooms. That's really a big key. Thinking about how we can incorporate student choice and voice, they were all really clear on that. And it's something that we underestimate sometimes for our kids on the spectrum, I think, and the importance that it was for them in creating a sense of belonging. How many people are familiar with peer-mediated interventions instruction? Couple. Okay, so when we think about how we can include our neurotypical students to help promote a sense of belonging, this is a really highly evidence-based practice that we use for training regular education peers in helping to teach and help generalize skills so that students experience that social reward. Okay, it helps with the motivation piece, and it is really beneficial not only for our students with autism, but our gen ed students get such benefit out of it. We're implementing it in a couple of our schools in Delaware County. So if you have questions about what that looks like or how we do that, come on up and ask me afterwards. It's really amazing what it does for our students in creating that sense of belonging and helping them display their skills. And then creating that positive student self-perception, and then really taking a look at the effectiveness of those social skills classes, because all the kids said they feel a sense of belonging in those classes, and they all said that they knew the skills, but none of them displayed them. They were very clear on that. They didn't have the competent piece, the social competence. So let's take a look and examine what's going on in our social skills classes, and are we including the generalization piece? This is my last piece. So remember I talked about Alan. He was an interesting guy, right? We had a really good conversation about what did it take in order to experience a sense of belonging. And he went on this long-winded explanation of need versus nice. So I want to just summarize this for you. You don't need a lot of friends, but I feel like you need more than one, because what if you guys get into a fight? It's very matter of fact and very, okay, I'm following you, Alan. He said, I'd say like 5 really good friends instead of like 100. I would pick 5 best friends. And then he said, so a lot of friends isn't necessary, but it's nice. You don't need $1 billion yacht, but some people think it's nice. Right? So it just kind of comes back to what we think kids need to experience belonging might be different than what they perceive that they need. Right? And ask them. Ask them what they need. It's okay to ask them, right? And so you might, you don't need $1 billion yacht, but some people think it's nice. These are the slides. So if you, when the copies are also uploaded, but you're welcome to email me and come up and ask any questions. Or if anyone has questions for the group, I'll take them now. I think I'm a little early too, so, oh yes. So lots of time for questions if you have them. Oh, and of course, we'll do the drawing. So my lovely assistant Emily is gonna run around and put everything in this little bag. Put your name on them. Any questions? Go ahead.
Are you considering, like, your population was fairly small, right?
Yep.
So are you considering moving this with a broader population?
Yeah, so let me talk a little bit about the sample size. We had participation from 13 school districts. The invitation went out to 13 school districts. 5 school districts agreed to participate. Of the criteria, 57 students met criteria. Parent permission came back for 5. So ideally, it would have been a much larger sample, of course. Some areas that I'm interested in expanding to would be really starting to look at our students that don't communicate in a verbal manner, right? I think we're missing a big population of doing a similar interview protocol with questions, but modifying it for students who use assistive technology for communication.
Well, and I thought the same thing too, like, because I've seen some kids who are really articulate using the technology.
Yeah, and we can do it. We absolutely can do it. I think that will be the next step. Instead of expanding grades, I would replicate the same, but target a different type of communication style. Only because we went with verbal because it was an easier way of a larger sample across the county, and we kept it in county. Yeah, good question.
Did the parents who chose to opt out give any indication of what kept them from participating?
No, so the question was if the parents that chose to opt out, did they give an explanation as to why? No, they just didn't respond, right? And so there was multiple attempts electronically and hard copy that they went home, but obviously middle school kiddos, I knew that was going to be a challenge with the study, but I didn't care. I wanted to interview kids. So 5 is where we landed.
I just wondered too, like, did the schools support you in soliciting parent input, or they didn't?
Good question. Did the schools support me in soliciting parents? They were the ones that had to do the soliciting.
Okay.
So that was part of the condition of the study, was that I provided them the parent permission form and all the information about the study. They didn't give me parent email or anything like that until they got assigned permission back. And then I was able to contact the parent. That was part of the methods. Yeah, good question. Anything else? Okay, let's do the drawing. Okay, is everyone excited? It's a treat. I might need help. AMYLVEHR.
Oh, Amy Ware. Is that what it says?
It looks like one long word. Amy. There you go. Look in here. Yay. Here you go, Amy. See, and you were participating and asking questions.
Really bad handwriting. I'm sorry.
I don't know what you're talking about. That was clear as... Thank you, guys.